my phone on silent so it's not pinging.
Hi Lou, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Nice to see everybody. My old friend, but still very young and gorgeous, Lou Thompson is there. So that's a joy to see you.
Oh, bless you, Helen. Lovely to see you. So glad to join you, Louise. I really am. It's just been mad. So sorry I've not caught up with you before, but it's lovely to see you.
It's really good. It's always the right time. Somebody has just asked a question over on Eventbrite. So while we're just gathering, I'm going to pop over there. I think it may be somebody who's joined us really late and obviously won't have got the code. So just bear with me.
No.
Vic, do you want to just introduce yourself so people know you're here to co-facilitate?
Yeah, will do. Hi folks, you've arrived so far. We're expecting quite a lot of people, well, maybe up to 50. So we're going to mute people once we've got a few more people in. That's not because we don't want to hear from you. It's just because 50 people talking at once would be a little bit crazy. So yeah, I'm just here to help with the practicalities of watching the chat and letting people in. So I'll be doing that and sorting out the breakout rooms and things like that.
Hi, Vic.
Hi, Abby, you all right?
Yeah, good to see you.
You too. Yeah, I wasn't expecting people that I knew, to be honest, but hello.
Hi Lou.
Hey,
How are you?
thank you for coming along. I'm good. Are you all right?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Should be good. You know, I'm having those nerves, and somebody's just messaged me on Eventbrite with a question, and now I can't figure out where to find the question again. So I'm just having a, you know, there's always got to be some sort of meltdown, hasn't there, at the start of everything?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, I apologise, background noise.
So we've got lots of people turning up, which is very exciting. Dun, dun, dun. Let's have a look at everybody. Yes, lots of smiley faces. That's good.
That's what we want, as long as you still smile at the end.
We've got a few people where we've only got half a face. So if you want to just tilt your screens down a little bit so we can see a bit more of you. So because there's going to be quite a lot of us, we're asking people to mute rather than get the background chatter. But we'll just give it a couple more minutes for some more people to arrive. Are you all right, Lou? Are you sorting out your Eventbrite?
Yeah, I've done. I've managed to reply. Someone couldn't make the link work, but hopefully we can have a go again. So it's so nice to see people. Hiya, Sally. I mean, hello, everybody. Hi, Abby. I can see, I've just seen you there. This is just lovely. If you Helen, I can see. Oh, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. See so many people and to meet people for the first time. Just give people a couple more minutes. Some people on their way. There's always that like awkward waiting time, isn't there, at the start of any Zoom meeting, particularly where we don't know one another. So please feel free to chat in the chat. I know it's a bit scary to sort of, you know, speak out loud in front of a lot of people, but feel free to do that while we gather. And I think, Vic, we'll start with whoever we've got at 5 past. We'll make a start then, because we've only got an hour, and that will, you know, enough time, I think.
Yeah. I think you've already seen in your Eventbrite, but we're also going to be using something called Mentimeter. So I've just put in the chat box a link to that to find that page if you've not got it already. And if you want to answer that question now, you can go in and do that now.
It is, Sally. It's brilliant to see so many people. Oh, brilliant. Kath's got in. Fantastic. Lovely to see you.
wonder if when we get back to real people meetings, if we'll still all wave.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do jazz hands to say thank you. Yeah. I know I don't want to get back to real meetings because I've got that Zoom airbrush filter. I don't want to get back into looking like the real me. Oh, lovely. Welcome, Andrea. It's fantastic. Lots of people coming in. Hi, Lucy. Great. We'll make a start in a minute. I did put in the, oh, hiya, Kelly. I did put in the email that came out. We are recording this. We're recording it as a resource for everyone, really. I just want to get the Thinking Environment word out to as many people as possible. So, and we'll be putting that up on YouTube with subtitles for any of you to be able to refer to. We'll send you an email from Eventbrite afterwards as well, and we'll put a link in there to the slides, to a copy of the slides, which have again got some links through, and to the results of the Menti. So you'll be able to see what comes out of it all. Okay, so it's 5 past. What do you think, Vic? Shall we make a start?
Yeah, I'm just going to mute everybody. So if you've got any questions or anything, folks, just post them in the chat box.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we're going to manage this with so... Oh. Muted me as well. That's how, yeah, how we'll manage it with so many people, and I suspect probably more people coming in as we make a start. My way, if you've ever worked with me, you will know that my way is all about being interactive, providing thinking spaces with other people. And with so many of us, we're just not going to be able to do that in any massive way today. We've tried to plan in stuff like the Menti. We're going to have a poll halfway through and an opportunity to practice thinking pairs. But it's pretty much going to be me talking. So we absolutely 100% welcome questions. Keep those coming in the chat. As well as Vic, we've got Isla here, we've got Katie here, Heather, Steph, and see who else, Helen, have all experienced the thinking environment at different times. Sally has as well. So please feel free to answer one another's questions as well if it's stuff that you feel you can do. I'm hoping to shut up at about 1:45 so that we've got time to go through all of the questions. But let's make a start, and I'll share my screen. And you'll soon see what a mission this is for me. So I've been training in a thinking environment, by which I mean I have been learning as well as, you know, sharing the learning out for 25 years, more or less, nearly. My son Fraser is 23, and I was pregnant with him when I went on my first Thinking Environment training course at the Centre for HIV and Sexual Health in Sheffield. And so I've raised him, in fact, in a thinking environment. And if you know, those of you who know anything about him will probably be able to see that, quite frankly, in the man that he is now. And I have used this in so many different ways in my practice as a community worker, later at Northern College, where I was for nearly 20 years, working on community regeneration programs, and eventually a social purpose teacher education program. My pedagogy is absolutely grounded in a thinking environment, and the team ran very much in a thinking environment as well. But I never made Northern College a thinking environment organisation. It's been really interesting to reflect on that in the last 3 years since I've worked nomadically. And what's happened over the last couple of years is that finally the thinking environment has started to find real traction, certainly in further education, by which I mean all its expressions of not just colleges, but also in the public sector, as a whole. It is, I think we're at a moment, aren't we, where actually, you know, I would imagine probably one of the things that's brought you here that intrigues you about the whole thing is you're probably as fed up as I am with the way the world is, the way we interact with one another, the way in which we express and communicate and talk and be with other people. And this is a way of making it different. So I'm going to present in 4 parts with just a little pause in between, and they will hopefully make sense logically as we go through. So let's start off with why. So the thinking environment is a disciplined set of processes which enable thinking. So if you were to read the work of Nancy Klein, who founded the thinking environment 50 years ago, she would say it's about creating spaces that enable people to do their best thinking together and on their own. The key word for me here is it's disciplined. And one of the challenges of the thinking environment is you're either in it or you're not in it. You know, you can't be messing about or half-heartedly doing it. You've got to proper do it. And I find that often people don't want that discipline. They're not used to working with that level of discipline. Compliance, yes. Discipline, no. And the discipline is a bit of a challenge. But when you nail it, what you've got is a culture change vehicle. Absolutely 100%. I'm going to end the presentation with stories about how thinking environment has been used to begin to change cultures. If we can change the culture of a family, of an organisation, of a work team, I fundamentally believe that we can change the culture of society. It's a communication practice, and like any practice, you're not going to learn it and be brilliant at it straight away. 25 years and I am still making mistakes. I am still learning. Probably 25 years of practicing yoga on and off, and I still can't stand on my head. So it's the same sort of thing. You know, practice is something you have to work at to get any good at it, and then you have to keep the work in. We run something I'll tell you a bit about later on, called an ideas room under a banner of Joy FE, further education. And I've been facilitating all those ideas rooms, and we've just, as a group of people, moved over to sharing the facilitation. The first time, Isla and Heather will remember this, the first time our colleague Michaela facilitated, her reflection afterwards was, my God, it's much harder than it looks. You know, you do this day in, day out, looks much harder than it looks. And it really is, because you are actually holding people in a discipline. So it repays being taken seriously. And then the other thing is, it is a process. So you bring your own content, and that's joyous. So you're not trying to tell people how to run their organization or how to teach, what to teach in their class, or, you know, anything. You're saying, this is a set of processes that's going to help you do your stuff, whatever your stuff is. Bigger picture for me is a piece of research that came out in 2018. Lou Thompson, you might have come across this in your field as well, because it was for the whole of public service. Nesta UK went out to research what good help means in public service, and they came up, I wouldn't necessarily choose that phrase of good help, but they came up with this notion that it enables people to feel hopeful, identify their own purpose, and confidently take action. That's not a dependency model. That's an absolute, you know, self-agency model. And thinking environment as a process really enables this. And that's where it fits for me in my sort of taxonomy of why I'm here and what I do in the world. So it's culture changing, and these are the 3 things, if you heard nothing else, these are the 3 things that I absolutely want you to hear. So feel free to take a photo of this screen. It isn't just another model. And I know everybody would say that, but truthfully it isn't. You know, we have people down the years who have pinched bits from here and there, constructed it into something, and we teach it as if it's truth. What Nancy Klein did over years and years and years is observe what seems to happen when the brain makes breakthrough. So this is an observation-based method, which is now increasingly supported by neuroscience. So the stuff that she observed, such as the power of appreciation, we absolutely know now that that's about blood flow, and it's about how the brain is fed in certain areas by, you know, the way the heart operates, the way the blood flow operates. So it's 100% a way of being in the world, and it's not It's not a tool in a toolkit. It sort of can be, but if you're gonna, if we're gonna change the world, we need to be like this in the world. It's deceptively different, but it sounds like I'm asking you to do things that you have done a million times. And what I find the hardest about facilitating a thinking environment, especially when I can't read people quite so well, is I feel my words dropping into a place that is already boxed off as active listening or, emotional intelligence or any of these things that we already have a space for. That gravitational pull of old thinking means that people shut off, they think they know what they're doing, and then you ask them to do a really simple thing, like it might not be an easy thing, but a simple instruction such as shut your gob and listen for 3 minutes, and people can't hear you because they think they know what active listening is, so they don't need to do this thing. And that for me is the hardest thing about facilitation. So if I'm a little bossy when we get to the thinking pairs, then that's the reason for that. It's deceptively different, but it feels the same. And it will be resisted. The thing that the thinking environment most does, and why it matters so much for me in my work, is it compels equality. Everyone in the room engages equal as thinkers. Role and rank is left at the door. I don't want to know what your job is. I don't want to hear you play that power game. Power games do come into the room, but they are really obvious. I always think in a thinking environment that you can sabotage it, but when you do sabotage it, it's really obvious, and you are the bad person. You can't subvert it. And it'll be resisted by people who have power and who are frightened of giving up that power. And it will be equally resisted by people whose comfort lies in the fact that they withdraw their voice. They just show up because it might be too frightening, or they've just got fed up, or they don't want to bring it. And they are often the most sabotagey. Again, you can see what's happening, it's out there, but it will be resisted. Working in a thinking environment way doesn't mean that you can't still be the principal of your college or the CEO of your organization. It just means you have to leave the ego at the door if you're engaging with your staff in a meaningful way. And, that's not always easy for people to do both those things. So why do we need it? Well, there's the big why, isn't there? But what it brings, I think, to any engagement is an opportunity to be risk positive. Instead of always fearfully scarce, being afraid of what we don't have, being afraid of what's happening, so that we become risk averse and just do the things we always do, even though we know that doesn't help. We're always firefighting, we're always clearing up. It helps us to take time to make decisions, having thought them through properly. So, we can be a bit braver, because actually if we've thought something through properly, if we've got a diversity of opinion around the table, then we're much more likely to be able to be risk positive and mitigate any mistakes. We need it because it has greater impact. You use your time much more effectively. It's so efficient. In those ideas rooms, we literally have an hour. I'll talk a bit more about them, but you would not believe what comes out of them in terms of stuff that changes organizations. There's no noise. There's no guff. All of that endless meeting stuff that is just so dull. You're actually working all the time. You're not just meeting for the sake of it. It's incredibly efficient. If you're a teacher, if you're an educator, what it brings is calm and disciplined learning spaces. So I've seen this used in special needs settings with kids, where the kids don't have the capacity to understand what they're doing as a thinking environment, but actually the teachers bring calm to the space because they're making less noise. They are allowing silence to happen. They're allowing people to be heard instead of finishing off the sentences and what have you. So in terms of what gets to be called in education now behaviour management, actually it just takes the bounce out of things. I've seen it used brilliantly and beautifully in youth work settings or in family learning settings, you know, to bring this calm. The decisions we make, I think, as I've said, about being risk positive are better because we've properly thought them through, and it absolutely builds trust. And that's what changes cultures at the end of the day, when you've got that trusting environment. I'll say a little bit more about that later. So where we are, this really it's just a model to have in your mind to try and explain one of the ways in which the thinking environment is different. It's looking at the application of the thinking environment to coaching, actually, in this example. But again, think about that good help, feeling hopeful, identifying your own purpose, confidently taking action. We're right up here on the right-hand side, where it's about the thinker constructing the questions for themselves. And what you've done is you've given them generative attention to make that possible. And that works with groups and individuals and pairs, but we'll look at the nuts and bolts of that in a bit. Vitruvian Man is here because, you know, back in Enlightenment days in the 1600s, in the west of Europe, we came into a manner of thinking created by the philosophers of the time that set this guy up to be the absolute epitome of what human is. And any one of us who falls short of this, whether by gender or skin colour or affluence or, you know, physical ability, or every one of us falls short of this Vitruvian Man. We are othered in our systems and structures. We know that education reproduces inequalities. We've got all the statistics we know. We know that the health service, for all its best efforts, reproduces inequalities. We know that all of these things are really linked. This, for me, is the work. It enforces equality. It gets us beyond that Vitruvian notion of, you know, who's more human than anybody else. So this is my philosophy, in fact, that I wanted to share with you. And before we come on to have a look at the 10 components of the thinking environment, Amelie, the thinking environment has revolutionized my perception of education, she said after doing some work as part of her professional practice. She works in a prison. She works in a prison full of blokes. She runs a prison education service. Ought to be, you know, the toughest gig of all. And I have been down to that secure estate, and I have seen how beautifully, actually, the people engage, the students there engage in this platform of equality with Amelie and her teachers, because she uses the thinking environment. And what they were telling me when I last visited was, nobody's ever shown me this respect in my life. Nobody's ever treated me as an equal. So that's why I'm going to do what I do. So just an example of how brilliantly it can work. So that was part one. And, you know, hope that some of you have in the meantime been contributing to that initial question on the Menti, because I really want to know what intrigues you, what brings you to this session today, what hooks you in. We're coming on now to look at the 10 components. And towards the end of this session, this part of the session, Vic's going to share with you a poll within Zoom to ask you, asking you about, you know, how the components resonate with you. Essentially, anytime we apply thinking environment, what we are doing as facilitators, coaches, you know, whatever word we use, we are holding these 10 components in place in order that the thinker or thinkers can do their best thinking. And I'm going to run through them fairly quickly. The first of these is attention. Listening, not active listening, not reflecting back, not trying to remember, just literally shutting up the noise in your head and communicating in a really still way to the thinker that you are listening to, you are fully listening to what they have to say. And what they have to say in the moment is so much more interesting than anything you have to say. Mostly in life, we listen to respond, just waiting for the tiniest pause so we can jump in. And you know, it comes from a good place. Fix people, rescue people, help people. In meetings, and conferences and webinars, we're often listening to interrupt, aren't we? Because when can I get my moment? I'm not sure, you know. This is about listening to generate the best attention. So rule number 1, you absolutely 100% do not interrupt in a thinking environment. Never, ever. Why would you think that anything you've got to say is worth disturbing somebody else's train of thought? We do our best thinking when we're allowed to fall silent and just think it through some more. And then the deeper thoughts come. And I'm hoping that even in 3 minutes each way thinking pair, you will get the chance to experience that. It's beautiful. Once you've had that, you will not want to go back. Once you've had that, the cut and thrust of the interruptive behaviour, the power behaviour in a meeting is something you won't ever want. It'll spoil you for it, to be honest. It's still all right, you know, you still might be all right with your mates, but, you know, even so, that experience of being truly given generative attention, it's nothing like it. Feelings are important in a thinking environment. You get somebody who's distressed or angry or frightened, they're not going to be able to think while that emotion has hijacked everything for them. So without patronising, without, you know, feeling the need to fix or solve or hug or anything like that, letting the feelings, just letting people just get past them so they can do their thinking, really important. Not in any way unprofessional if you want to be able to get, you know, something out of it. If people are expressing their feelings in a way that's harmful for other people, that's a different issue, isn't it? That's a safeguarding issue. But I'm talking here about the expression of the feelings we all have. And one of the things about this time is, I think, in many situations, we're able to allow ourselves to be more openly vulnerable with people. Appreciation, we don't have time to spend a lot of time on this today, but in many of the thinking environment applications, it is built in, it is intentionally built in, and it grows trust and mutual respect like nothing else. It's always sincere, specific, succinct. It doesn't land if you just give people a load of fluff. And many people feel very uncomfortable with it. I have had people say in evaluations, I love doing the thinking environment, but I don't want to do the appreciation because it feels a bit, well, you know what? If you can't find it in you to appreciate another human being and you're in a world or a job or a life where it's about people, I think you probably need to do a little bit of work on yourself, just saying. So it makes people squirm, but it's a really important part of it all. Place is important. If we were, you know, sitting in a, I don't know, remember the days where we could sit in a busy cafe and trying to have a one-to-one coaching session, that's going to be really hard. So it's thinking about making sure, you know, you're in a place which is as pleasant as possible, which actually says to the people doing the thinking, you matter. Information matters. This is not opinion. This is not putting you to anything. If, for example, Abby, you know, you were trying to sort of work through something, but you didn't know the date of a meeting, and I knew the date of that meeting, it would be ridiculous for me not to offer that information. Or for you to say, hold on a minute, Lou, keep giving me that attention. I'm just going to look on my calendar, find out the date of the meeting. Simple as that. But so often, aren't we trying to think or make decisions in the absence of key pieces of information? And we can't quite get to seeing that because of all the noise. Ease. I struggle with this. I'm quite an animated person, but when you are thinking, when you are listening, actually trying to create an atmosphere of ease. Katie Sharp, who's with us today, has got a beautiful story to tell about the impact of working in a thinking environment and how the ease that came with that had real, you know, radical physical benefits for her. So, you know, ease brings so much in terms of mental health and well-being. When you feel the bounce or fear or whatever it is come out of a room, you feel people settle into a thinking environment. It's absolutely beautiful. I've talked enough, I think, about equality. Encouragement, just notice that in the middle of that word is the word courage. So encouragement in a thinking environment is not the pat, pat, pat on the head. It's, you know, equality is absolutely there. It's creating the conditions for people to be braver. Which reminds me, I should have said about appreciation, it's not praise. Praise is not on a level. Yeah. And Nancy always says that when you say thank you, you're making it be your party. And that has stuck with me for a long time. Appreciation between equals. Incisive questions are the way in which we, really think about the questions we're asking so that they are open. We don't have time in this short session to go very far into incisive questions, but that's something we could perhaps do another day. And diversity, last, absolutely not least, defined in a thinking environment as every single person being present as themselves. And what that means is all of their identities, all of their experiences, which have formed the way that they think. If you can enable the individual to think and speak for themselves with courage in a situation, then that is fundamentally brilliant diversity work, because they're not having to hide or pass or, not acknowledge any part of themselves. Okay, so do you want to do the poll, Vic, and just take a minute to just really interested in which of the 10 components you feel most drawn to?
Just want to check, can everybody see that? Just thumbs up if you can. Yeah, great.
You'll have to scroll, there are 10 on there. Vic, are you going to do the big reveal at the end of the session? To let us know which is the most popular. I'm always really interested because partly it helps me shape, what we can work on next. But for you also, if you're drawn to one, then, to go away, do a bit of thinking, reading, a bit of work about that might be really interesting. Okay. So don't forget to keep questions coming and we'll come back. Is there anything burning, Vic, that I need to answer right away before we go on to the next bit?
No, we've just welcomed a few extra people in who had
cool.
trouble with connections. So.
Welcome. I'm not looking in the chat, but I'm sure Vic's probably said we're going to be recording this, making the slides available so you'll be able to catch up. One of the things to reflect on as we go through the sessions, a lot of me talking, but also I'm really trying hard for there to be, however brief, silences. Something about the practice of a thinking environment, which is just recognizing in yourself how you feel with the silence. Are you awkward? Is it uncomfortable? Are you wondering why somebody's not saying anything? Are you feeling you ought to say something? Because that's part of the practice, to try and relax through that. And I have to say that in stressful situations, I'm still not great at that. Ease is the one, that the component that I am always working on, just to try and take it down, to calm it down. So those 10 components, we endeavour to hold all 10 in place at any time. When all 10 are in place, we're in a thinking environment. If a couple are missing, we might still have really improved the environment for thinking and communication, but we're not fully there. We hold them in place and we apply them to one of the applications of a thinking environment. Nancy called these applications long before we had apps on the phone. So that language always really interests me. You're going to try out thinking pairs, which is simultaneously like the easiest but the squirmiest of things to do in a thinking environment. You might hate it, and if you've done it before, and I don't know if you can sort of see everybody, if people want to share in the chat their first experience of doing a thinking pair, almost certainly you won't have enjoyed it, because it feels so countercultural to basically shut up and just listen and not be allowed to speak or interrupt, even if the person begs you to. I'll set that up in a minute. You're going to try that. You can think in a dialogue or trialogue or quadrilogue, is there such a word, where actually what happens is you've decided or you've settled on a subject. So I will start talking, and when I start to run out of steam, I'll say to Amy, what do you think? And she will just, give her freshest thinking. And when she runs out of steam, she'll say to Andrea, what do you think? We might do it in pairs or threes, any bigger, and it becomes a round essentially, but we just keep on going for the time that we've got. And it's a great way of practicing thinking for yourself. Rounds, an absolute staple. Often it's rounds that we do in the Joy FE room. The question, always an affirmative opening question. In teaching higher education, college-based higher education, I always loved the question, what have you heard, read or seen, and what questions did it raise for you? That's just so beautiful because it compels people to step up. You know, you can't keep passing. It gets embarrassing. It's okay to pass, but once people are passing all the time, actually peer pressure starts to lean. So rounds, yeah, wonderful. What's your freshest thinking? What's live in you? You know, can we live with this when it comes to a decision-making round? Yes, no, all sorts of different ways to use them. Time talk would be a conflict management, conflict resolution application where it is facilitated, two people who are at odds with one another, literally a minute each, or even 10 seconds each, 10 seconds each. The facilitator builds it up, but the equality is in the sharing of time. Coaching and mentoring in a thinking environment, very precise processes using questioning frameworks to enable the thinker to power on through the limiting assumptions that, the untrue limiting assumptions that are stopping them moving on. And I don't know if anybody is here who witnessed, I did a live one of these the other day, really powerful because it's, your own words are used to shape the questions. Transforming meetings, a blend of different applications that really does do that. And I'll direct you to somewhere where you can read more about that and the incredibly wonderful, powerful Time to Think Council, where someone brings an issue and benefits from the diversity of others' thinking. So the list goes on and on. And I'm not going to go through them all. Pairs is what we're going to practice today, but there'll be plenty of reading afterwards if you want to find out a little bit more. So let's move on to pairs. This is a 6-minute activity. What Vicky's going to do is move everybody allocated randomly into a breakout room. If you've never experienced, I'll just stop sharing for a minute so that I can see you all. If you've never experienced a thinking environment breakout room before, and you're a Harry Potter fan, it's like using flu powder. You know, you'll be whisked into a space and it'll be like really exciting to see who you end up with. We can't monitor that space. We can't see what happens in there. So on trust, what we want you to do when you get in that space is take 3 minutes each. Sally, Katie, many of you have done this one already. Take 3 minutes each to think. So decide very quickly who's going to go first. Kelly, say you're with Pam. I'll leave that one for you to pick up, Vic. Say you're with Pam. You know, you say, okay, I'll listen first. Pam, what do you want to think about? And then you don't need to set the clock because she's gonna send a text message into each of the rooms after 3 minutes. Then you just literally shut up and Pam thinks. Now, Pam, you might want to think silently. You might want to be quiet for a bit and then say something out loud. You want to write something down. Kelly, you don't write anything down. You're just listening. You're just giving that generative attention. Pam, she starts to think, oh my God, this is going on forever. And she starts asking you direct questions. Kelly, you're like, no, I'm just going to smile nicely. I'm going to listen. And at the end of the 3 minutes, then you swap over and Pam, you ask the same. What do you want to think? What I want you to do is experience what it is like to be fully listened to be like 100%, to know you're not going to be interrupted. I want you to have that experience because it's really special. At the end of the 6 minutes, Vic will start to pull everybody back and you get a minute's notice. So in that minute, keeping it sincere, specific and succinct, I would like you, please, to just offer each other 2 or 3 words of appreciation, and then we'll come back into the main room. Okay?
Okay. So I'm going to put everybody into a room. If you can't hear the other person, I know at least one person thinks they might have a problem with the microphone. So Lucy, I know I'll come into your room and see if we can work that out. We have got a couple of people who are losing their connections and coming back in. So if you find yourself in a room by yourself, just hang on and hopefully somebody will come in and join you very shortly. So let's give it a go. Hi Laura, are you getting the option for a room?
I do apologise, Mike. At the pivotal moment, my iPad decided to turn itself off. I do apologise for that.
It's okay, I can just create a new room. Oh, hang on. I'm just going to have to create a new room for you, Andrea.
Okay.
The option to do that from here. Okay, I'm going to put one of you into a room with somebody else. Oh, in fact, I've got a couple of rooms where I can put you. That's right. I'll put you into this room 11. Okay. Hi, Lucy. Okay, you're on mute at the moment.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Right, you're a little bit quiet, but your microphone's a little bit breaky uppy. Oh, can't hear you at all again now. I think you might just have to sit this one out, Lucy. I'm sorry about that. Is that okay? So you can stay in the room and have a little bit of peace, and you'll still get the message. And if anybody, we've had a couple of people dropped out and come back in. So, but yes, your audio's disappeared again now. So, okay, sorry about that. Have a ponder. I'll see you later.
How's it going, Vic? You're doing a brilliant job. Hang on, you're muted.
Oh. Funny. There's a lady called Lucy whose audio isn't working. So we ended up, because somebody else dropped out, she ended up in a room by herself anyway. So she's having a little sit.
Okay.
So because I was caught up doing that, and a couple of people who went out and came back in again. I've only just done the 3 minutes, so people will only have about half a minute to do the appreciation.
That's fine. Yeah, no worries.
So there was Abby. I'm sure Katie's told you there was Abby's question that she's answered about can you do a thinking environment if other people aren't. So it might be probably worth picking up on that. Katie answered it in the chat, and there was also so somebody was just asking if there was a link to your live session that you did. You mentioned a live.
It wasn't recorded.
No, okay.
We just did it in the IDs room.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so it's going fine.
Good.
There's quite a lot to think about when you.
Honestly, the proper is. I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for your help. It's just so nice to know you there. And like Heather, you know, there's a couple of people in the state who they'll be, you know, that they'll just be comfortable in there. It just makes you feel nicer. Yeah, my old school friend.
Oh, cool. Cool. Right, I'm going to go back out because I need to post another message just to remind people about appreciating each other, and we'll see you back in the room.
See you back in the room.
Okay. Hi everybody, welcome back.
Oh no, Sally's lost. I hope she refines herself. It's always it's a bit of a risk, isn't it? It would have been much smoother if I'd just talked for an hour, but you would have got very bored.
We've just got a few more people coming back into the room. Yeah, I think, yeah, we had one person who unfortunately ended up alone, but
I think I saw a glimpse of Mars there. I did. Lovely. So we've got 15 minutes. I just want to whip through the last section then, because I want you to get a sense of how people are using this really amazingly. Okay.
how was it for people? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Oh, they can see at least one thumbs up. Do feel free to put your thoughts in the chat while I carry on. I'd like to start the last section with this testimony, which is from someone I worked with a couple of years ago at Blackburn College. We'd had 10 weeks together for 2 hours a week. That was literally it. And at the end of that, crediting the thinking environment, she said, this is the first time I ever felt fully accepted as a Black woman since I came to the UK 30 years ago. You know, I could have finished my teaching career then. What a thing. What an amazing thing to hear. And that wasn't me. That was the process. And that's the power of it. And today of all days, right here, right now, it felt really important to share that. Thinking environment is about building trust, and even where trust it does not exist, has not existed, you can start somewhere. If you're not already familiar with the work of Christina Donovan around trust in FE, please go and seek it out. Christina did a podcast recently on the Teaching Excellence podcast, and she is doing some work with Brewed FE. We did a little comedy video together, but this is about her work, and she came up with 3 preconditions for trust in organizations, and the thinking environment grows all of them, or rather it exposes where there is incompetence, It does that really, sometimes really incisively, actually. It breeds and grows benevolence, that kindness to one another that is enacted through appreciation. And above all, if integrity is the sum of your values, and I believe that it is, it's the way in which we live our values, then the fact that it's such a values-based process means that everything within it's conducted with integrity, even if it feels a little bit squirmy. All of that is what builds trust. And Christina and I, before the lockdown, had started doing some work together with senior leadership teams around building trust in a thinking environment, that we hope to be able to pursue. I didn't want to ignore the notion of power in a thinking environment, because it's all about, if you bring people into the room as equals, they step outside of a hierarchy of power. That power and politics as usual has to be suspended while you have those conversations. In Latin, in French, probably in Italian and other Romance languages, there are two words for power. One of them is potestas, which is power and politics as usual. The other is potentia. And what happens in a thinking environment space is your potential, your sort of activist, creative sense of power is what comes to the fore. So few places, just a few that I've picked about where this has been working. The Bachelor BA in Education that I taught on at Blackburn College, where we heard Rowetta's testimony from. When I walked in that room for the first time, people will have heard me say this, that down one side of the room were all the white faces, down the other side were all the brown faces. They weren't antagonistic, they just never connected. One guy in the room, a white guy, had 95% of the airtime, if not more, for 3 years. We had 10 weeks together, and by the end of it, the society of that group was completely different, as well as the grades being, so off the scale, so much more than anybody ever expected, because people were thinking and developing trust between them. If you know colleagues at Chesterfield College, they are literally remaking their college through thinking environment practices and processes, rethinking every aspect of college life to inscribe the 10 components on it, to bring joy and empathy to college planning, and they're using the thinking environment to do that. And I'm sure colleagues from there would be happy to talk with you about that, so just let me know. In the East Riding, working within a local authority, if any of you do that or have done that, incredibly potestas, hierarchical, really difficult to carve out any wriggle room to develop stuff around education. East Riding, doing some fabulous stuff with teams of often very, very sessional tutors, couple of hours a week people, being able to engage with the whole staff team through the thinking environment. And then finally, the Joy FE Ideas Room, which we've got some people here today who regularly come along to that. It takes place mostly during term time at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening and 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. It's 1 hour. We do 2 thinking rounds, and then we separate into different rooms. We might do in pairs or a council or whatever. It's a beautiful space, but it's not just that. You would not believe what has come out of those efficient spaces. Induction programs are written. Curricula are designed. We did a whole magazine in 5 days, an e-magazine. Incredibly huge and complex pieces of work, created out of some really clean thinking. And you don't have to have an idea, you can just be there and listen, as many of us do much of the time, and still learn an incredible amount of stuff. We are now taking ideas rooms into different organisations. I'm doing a piece of work at Mycroft College using ideas rooms. We are using, we're sort of blending the thinking environment with the 3 horizons model of decision making and leadership to look at, making decision making processes even clearer. There's a lot going on, and we would love you to be involved. There is a second Menti question using the same code that we would love you to participate in, because that helps shape what will come next out of this. So it asks you, I think it's something like, you know, what do you need now to bring the thinking environment more into your life and work? Some references which all have a link through. If you looked at one thing, make it be this creating spaces to think in education and training, because it's a real practical guide. And then finally, you know, the last message from me, freedom needs boundaries, and the discipline of the thinking environment frees up people's thinking, all people's thinking, not just the gobby ones, in a way that's really powerful. So that's it. It took a little bit longer than I thought, but we do have 6 minutes for any questions. So I'll stop sharing and I'll see what you've got for me, Vic.
Oh, okay, so we had a couple of questions. One, just a practical one. Isla asked about if there was a link to the live session that you did, but there is unfortunately no link to that. So sorry about that, Isla. Abby was asking, can you have a thinking environment when others don't want that or don't have that attitude?
I think what would happen if people didn't want it is they would sabotage it, and then at least you might know what you're doing with that. They can't hide, you know. I think if I don't see, as long as people have got mental capacity out, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't explain what you were doing. But maybe there are questions to ask then which are, you know, what are you assuming that's making you not want to do this? Because that's really interesting. The answer's almost always fear, if people can be brave enough to say that. Yeah, I mean, I'm used to there being one or two saboteurs, particularly, but it's obvious. There's always some story afterwards, you know.
And a question that's just come up now, how long would you plan for a thinking environment to take place? What's the ideal time?
It's more about what do you want to achieve with how many people and how long have you got. So it's choosing an application to fit what's available. I can't see Andrea. I think I've got her on. I think she's on the other screen. So yeah, oh, there you are, Andrea. Yeah, it's more about what's available. So if you've only got 10 minutes, do pairs. You know, if you've got 40 minutes, do a time to think council, if you're just wanting to address one issue. So have a read up on the different applications, and it's more about choosing the application. But when people, sometimes what you hear is, oh, well, you know, well, first of all, you hear it's fluffy. Is there anything fluffy in telling people to shut the gobs for 3 minutes? I don't think there is. You know, it's really disciplined. It's the opposite of fluffy. So when people say it's fluffy, I want to know what they're choosing to think. Actually, it's fake news, basically. So yeah, what was I saying before I started banging on fluffy? Oh yeah, people say we don't have time for this. It massively saves time. And there's a piece of work that a colleague called Emily Havers did for her master's dissertation that sets out to really prove this as well. So if you need, you know, a bit of evidence to wave in front of somebody's head, it's huge. How much time is wasted in meetings? Like lifetimes are wasted in meetings, and that doesn't happen here. Good question, Andrea. Good help enables people to feel hopeful, identify their own purpose, and confidently take action. Thank you, Isla.
Okay. Shall I just share the poll results?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay. There we go.
Attention. Oh, ease. Yeah. I promise you, folks, that I've been as workaholic as any one of you could have been in this room. I worked in an organisation where, you know, 70 hours a week was like expected. You got paid for 35. Many of us know that. I still found ease in a thinking environment, even if it was just 5 minutes each way with a colleague. or a walk in the ground. It'd be 10 minutes up the hill, 10 minutes back down, or 2 minutes each way up. Whenever we were in a team meeting that was a thinking environment, it brought ease, and I'm sure it kept me alive, frankly. I'm not joking, because the stress, the sort of physical, you know, ness of that, yeah, ease is the thing. Yeah, no, it's not, Louise, honestly, it's a really beautiful way of working with residents. Now, there'll be a lot of stubbornness because I know some of the usual suspects, and people are used to working in the way that they work. And unless things have changed massively, you've got some real stalwarts there, haven't you? And a lot of inequality in the voices, even though everybody is theoretically are equal. So I'm not saying it's easy work, but I wish I had been more confident in doing this when I was a community worker. I really do, because I was only just starting out then, and I would have done nothing else but this. One more minute, anything more? Yeah. And remember, raised my son in a thinking environment, seen some beautiful work over, I think it was Wirral Adult Education, where they use thinking environments in family learning. You know, where parents have supervised access to the kids, and they use thinking environments 1 minute each way, even 30 seconds each way. Kids were loads better at it than the parents. The parents learned to be better at it. And there's a blog on the Education Training Foundation website where Maria has written about her experience of doing that.
So Lou, do you want to say anything about follow-up for people, or if people have feedback or questions?
Yes, the recommended reading, Christina, have a look at the Creating Spaces to Think guide. There's a link through on the slides when we send you the slides. Now I am going to send you an email from Eventbrite, because that's how, yes, you can join, yes, you can, Kath. I'm going to send you an email from Eventbrite. You might need to, and there are people who couldn't get in today, I think, because their organisational firewalls were blocking it. That's the only way I can get into it.
It's not going to work, is it?
So if you don't get that email, then you need to contact me and I'll send it to you. I'll have a link to the slides and to the recording. I at the moment, I'm not getting paid for doing any of this. I'm in a really beautiful position. It's a bit like being on universal basic income, whereas a self-employed person, I got a bit of dosh from the government and I'm able to do the work I want, like the Joy FE work. I can't keep doing that forever. So I would love you to help me shape what comes next. And hopefully the mentee might give me some ideas. Is there a particular aspect? What would be useful for you in terms of training? And going forward, I really want to explore a pay what you can afford model to be able to do thinking environment training. You could go to Nancy and she would train you beautifully and it would cost you thousands. So I'm not saying don't do that, but I'd love us to work together to develop a way of taking this forward. Yeah, and thank you, Isla. I have got a Patreon and the link's on the slide. So if you want to support my work financially, and thanks to people who've already done that, it's really, really appreciated. We've gone over, I never do that. Goodbye. And big thanks to Vic for doing all the hard work today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Lou, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Oh, and
Bye.
Good to see you, Vic.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lou.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Lovely to see you.
Bye. Thank you, Lou. Thank you.
I think Andrea is probably, yeah, I can't make it. Do you want to bob out and bob in again, Vic?
Let me just.
Oh, stop the recording.
Yeah. Oh, that's recording.